How's it going today?
It's good. It's good. This weekend we had our level 2 archetype workshop series on the
Oh,
child archetype,
it
and
was
it
so
was
cool.
so amazing. So amazing.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it this morning about how a lot of folks have done inner child work, and I was like, why is child archetype work so different than inner child work? Because
Mhm.
it is so different. Um, and like the description that I came up with is that it has a different center of gravity, you
Ooh,
know?
tell me more.
Well, I feel like when doing work with your child archetype, it really is kind of the example that you gave in I think it was like level one or even in one of our pre-vision statement workshops that we did, describing, your immigrant archetype versus your child archetype. And even though you can do work with your immigrant archetype as a child, it's like to me that is connected to inner child work
Mhm.
because it's like it's more how that affected you as a child and
Right.
the wounds that reverberated from that experience and so on and so forth. But when it comes to your child archetypes, they're always your child archetype. It's
Mhm.
how you connect to, um, you know, universal energy. It's how you
Yes.
connect and how you integrate and like weave that childlike wonder, that sense of possibility, that like eagerness to learn and
Mhm.
play and all of those kinds of things. And so that's what I mean by it having a different center of gravity is it comes from a like a completely different perspective, like a different approach.
Yeah,
And so that was I think very it was very powerful our workshop this weekend. So
it was. And what I noticed was, we might be very familiar. Well, some of the participants were familiar with inner child work. Um, some were not. And what I've noticed is that it could be very much easier to access inner child, but
mhm,
when we have a name for that archetype that's part of our wheelhouse,
mhm,
we it's it's surprising, right? So like some of the characteristics or the light and shadow attributes of those specific archetypes, we looked at them and were immediately, it wasn't like, "Oh, yeah, I relate to that. Oh, yeah, that makes sense." It took time to kind of, like, dive a little deeper and go, "Oh,
that's where that
I
goes. Yeah.
yeah, like, ooh, okay, wounded child? Not sure I relate to that. Ah, maybe that."
Right, right, right. We definitely had some breakthroughs, as far as that goes. And in that workshop, we go over all the main child archetypes and their
Mhm.
light and shadow attributes. And we even had a lot of folks comment on, well, I relate to that and that child art, even though I don't have that child art.
Yeah,
And so we got to have a nice discussion about how that interrelates and interconnects for everyone.
yeah,
So yeah, so that was super, super wonderful.
I
And
know.
yeah, I had a wonderful time.
Me too,
Um,
me too.
so today we're talking about percentages, and how that all interconnects. And so I think what we're doing today is just giving folks a snapshot of um, how percentages kind of relate to the energy work, and how they can be a helpful tool
Mhm.
and how they can be a distraction, which I'm very familiar with. So I'll let you kick it off.
Okay, so let's kind of give like what in the world are we talking about, right? So um when we've worked with percentages, it's usually related to like I am trying to get to one place, right? Like, or I'm working on um, my magical child archetype, and she's struggling with X, Y, and Z, and I need to get her moving, right? So, like, where is she in that space? So then I go, okay, she's 30% there, right? So, like, I'm gonna I want you to, like, expand on that. What does that? Because 'cause you're really good at articulating the
Yeah,
things that
yeah, yeah.
like
Yeah,
so what
and
does that mean when I
the way
say she's 30% there?
okay, so the way that I think about it is like is it's usually in relation to healing a wound. It's focusing on some kind of healing.
Mhm,
And what I was told in the beginning, like in the first year that I was doing energy work, was that, when you're like getting to 50% of that healing, it's like
good point.
that's where it feels like a drudge. That's where it feels like you're going uphill. It's an uphill battle. It's something that
Y
you really have to focus your attention on. And then once you get to the 51%, then it's like you're at the top of the mountain and you're walking
mhm,
down the mountain. And so then you have the wind at your back. You have the momentum, you have, you know, the clarity. And so then it's easier, quote unquote, at various points in time to go from 51% to 100%.
uh-huh,
So when you're talking about, a magical child being at 30%, that means that whatever the issue is, whatever the focus, the problem, the challenge, whatever that means that you are 30% towards the healing of that.
mhm,
So, like I know I have a couple things that I'm working on right now and I'm still in single digits and
mhm.
I don't like it. I don't like it. And and sometimes that can take days, sometimes it could take weeks, months, sometimes years, sometimes decades, to work through, some of these things. And so the percentages for me are like a tool of awareness. Like it's like a
Mhm,
progress report in a
yeah,
way, is the way that I look at them. And they offer me kind of like a point on a map. Okay,
yeah,
I'm taking a cross country trip
yes,
and I've made it to St. Louis.
yes.
Or,
Or like
and
when
I'm
you're filling out those online forms and it shows you like at the bottom how much you
yeah,
of it you've completed and how much you
right.
have left. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
When you're done, it doesn't mean like that, right? It just means that you've completed that specific um uh ball of energy
Focus or
and
yeah,
yeah,
you
that you've been focused on and you can move on to something else and it could be related, it could be not related, but
well, and the thing is you will move on to something else
yeah,
because it's like it's a lot of people have heard that analogy of like it's like peeling the layers of the onion. So it's
right.
like when you go through, one protocol or one area of healing focus,
Mhm,
and you get to like that 100%, it's like okay, so that layer is going to peel and then what it's going to reveal behind it is something else, something
mhm,
new, and there might be new tools to work with, there might be new awareness to work with, there might be a new focus, and like you said, it might be related, it might be completely different, and it's like these pieces of a puzzle, and I think I said this last week, like the universe is always working towards balance, So it's
Mhm.
like all these different pieces of the puzzle working towards their balance point, and
Yeah.
that to me is what the work that you and I both do is about, is like
Mhm.
working towards those balance points. And the percentages are really, they're really a tool, they're a resource, they're a reference, um, that can help folks understand, where they are in terms of their progress and their
Yeah.
progression
Yeah.
towards healing or focusing on a particular issue. Because I've even had circumstances where I've I've reached 100%, I've finished, a protocol or healing on something,
Mhm.
and then like 5 years later, a greater depth, a new
Sure.
aspect of healing, then I've gained enough strength, I've gained enough clarity, enough awareness, where it's
Mhm.
like now I'm ready to go into this new depth, and I'm
Yes.
starting at 0%. So
Yeah.
it's, it's a process and it's a tool, to kind of track and just kind of be aware of your progress. Um, I guess for me, one of the things that I appreciate percentages most is when I am, releasing, um, anger or
Mm.
frustration or sadness or sorrow or emotions, like big emotions.
Yeah. That don't feel so good.
Right,
You're
and
like,
so it's
"How
like
much
that.
longer?"
Right, exactly. So that to me is, that's when it's like particularly helpful, is like when I've got this like, huge sack of sadness or something like that, connected to whatever,
Yeah.
that I'm working on, draining and releasing.
Yeah. And even like when I say like how much longer, that's not even as accurate, right? Because it doesn't necessarily translate to the amount of time that it's going to take,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Like it really does depend on how much intention and how much focus we give it, right? I mean, if I dedicate, you know, if I'm working through grief and I dedicate a whole week to just grieving, depending on what it
yeah,
is, then I'm going to move through bigger pieces than if I'm just
yeah.
allowing it to happen in the background, or if I'm only dedicating my 2-minute shavasana at the end of my yoga class to it, or you know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's going
Yeah.
to move, but it just depends on how much space and time I am allowing
Right.
it.
You're
Yeah.
dedicating towards
Exactly.
it. Yeah, no. That makes sense, and I think that that's definitely helpful for folks. And the other thing is that while you're doing that, it like that's not the only thing that's energetically
Right.
happening for you or that's
Right.
shifting. So it's like, like you said, okay, so if I can give like 100% of my attention and my energy for a week and
Right. And
get through
how
this
rare
grief
is
thing,
it
right?
that we can do that?
Yeah, it's very, very rare. And so that's why, I think the percentages are so helpful, because I've even remembered like when I've worked on protocols, like sometimes I would have like 2 or 3 protocols, and one protocol was getting 5 minutes a day, another was getting 2
Mhm.
minutes a day, and then the other was getting, maybe 10 minutes a day. And for whatever reason, they were all interconnected, and like
Mhm.
that was the time for them and all that stuff. Um, but there's been times when it's like, 2 or 3 weeks of the 2 minutes a day, well, boom, that takes care of it right there. And then there's other times where it's like that 10 minutes is like, 60 days out, 90 days out. It's like I'm still needing to
Yeah.
do that work.
Yeah.
So,
It really it depends so much on how in our body it is, how our belief systems are around it, how where we are, kind of where it's hit.
yeah.
Um, it really it really depends on so many things.
Yeah. And it's you think about you think about the repetition of patterns, and you think about, like, even the way that we breathe, like, it's like you establish the patterns of your breath when you were born, when you were a
Mhm.
child, when you were a baby, when you were a
Yeah,
young child. It's like we've established those patterns of breath, and they, unless we focus on shifting or changing them or altering them,
mhm,
then those patterns can just be, subconscious, and that's the way that that pattern is expressing itself. Well, that can go towards a pattern of the way that you express grief, a pattern of the way you express love, a pattern of the way you express anger or frustration or
yeah,
fear or any of those things. And when you are trying to heal a particular pattern that no longer serves you, then it's like, then bringing your attention and your awareness to it can allow you to shift that.
yeah, well said, I love that, like, reminder about the breath and just that's how we yeah, how old, right? Like, how
Yeah,
old and how, automatic
yeah,
that we
yeah.
are. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many of those patterns that we each carry individually, and then some of them are
Mhm.
collective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Anything else we
Cool.
wanna say about percentages?
I like them. I like them.
I
Oh.
know, I think the other thing I'll say about it is that, like, when you mentioned, like, about being single digit, I think sometimes it's actually so encouraging because you look around and you go, "Okay, if I'm doing decently while I'm in, like, 3%, holy fuck, how would I do if I was at 30 or 60 or 90%?" Right? Like,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there's a space there to kind of go, "Oh,"
yeah.
like, "Wow, my potential is incredible."
Mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah, that's to me, that's an "Oh, Captain, My Captain" moment, from Dead Poet Society, where he makes all of them get up on the desktop.
uh-huh.
That's like giving yourself a new perspective and a new way to look at it,
Yeah,
which I totally appreciate and love.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Okay, so we encourage everybody to go on the journey of your healing. I mean,
yeah,
in all ways, shapes, or forms, just discovering more about who you are and what you want and what's right for you and what's true for you and how to get there. And um, yeah.
yeah. It's a really, really, really powerful and transformative journey.
Hmm.
Um, all right, so let's share with some folks what we have coming up. We have some free vision statement workshops scheduled for September. You can definitely get those, um, the links to those on our link trees,
And I
which
just got
is,
to say about those vision statement workshops, right? Like I'm creating, um, like posts for it, right?
hmm
It's so challenging for me to, in like a few catchy sentences, say how powerful those
hmm
workshops are. I mean, they're an hour and a half of support. It's not like pre-recorded. It's not just a bunch of like la-di-da-di things. It's like real work with us.
hmm
And they're so valuable. So I really encourage people to show up for that and to be a part of it because it's being in community with others and it's
yeah,
getting some really good tools.
for
Like
sure.
it's like being in a session with
Yeah,
one. So and you get
yeah.
both. So
Yep, and you get both of us together,
yeah.
which is amazing, and we love to work together. So those
Mhm.
dates are in September, and it's a free vision statement workshop. So sign up if any of those dates work for you. And then the other thing that we have listed and come up with dates for is our fall archetype workshop series. So we're going to be doing our
Yeah.
archetype workshop again in the fall. The one big difference, I think, from the fall archetype workshop series to the summer is that in the summer we did it like 4 weeks
Once a
apart.
month.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and now we're going to do it every 2 weeks because
Uh-huh.
I just think that I think we felt that it was just too long in between, and it
Yeah.
was each of the workshops was so powerful, and with the
Yeah.
same group of
Oh my god.
people, it was just the potency of having that same group and hearing, what other people were sharing and all of that. It's just a really, really powerful and grounding experience, especially if you have a spiritual practice and you just
Mhm.
want to deepen it and dig further in. It just gives you like a whole other layer to work with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and and then we have one other thing, our mini course. Do you want to talk
Oh!
about that?
Yeah, sure. Sure, sure. So our mini course is easily instant access to some of the stuff we have worked with in our vision statement workshop.
Hmm.
Um, so if you want to get on that before September, or if you can't make it to one of the September live dates, or you can do both, um, you can get instant access to that. And that is vision work and archetype work. Um, and that's going to be available in the description below. You just need a passcode to that. So fill out the form and you'll get your passcode immediately.
Cool.
Hmm.
Awesome. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a wonderful week.
Amazing week. And we'll
And
be here
thank
next
you.
Monday morning.
Next Monday morning. Have a good one. Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.